Who are these people?
But this is just more proof for you wonderful people at home to be more involved in local politics. Like we know, especially since we do this, that talking about Biden or Trump or DeSantis or whoever kind of gets the views and like the clicks or whatever, but we always say it starts from where you live because you have the most control over what's happening personally in your town or city in terms of your local government or state government.
Mhm.
And, there's a lot of talk about ranked choice voting, especially from these bigger YouTubers in the space who are like, oh, we need to have ranked choice voting, but we don't talk about ways of how we can get ranked choice voting viable. Like, especially if they're like, oh, I will vote for a green person candidate if we had ranked choice voting, but we don't have it. So yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking about. One of a few people that I
Can
had
you
in
stop
mind.
embarrassing yourself?
The other one that I was thinking. And more, but I don't think you have them
no,
on the soundboard.
thankfully.
So, and that's thankfully, and that's fine. But yeah, you read this right. Our title: DC Democrats sue ranked choice voting. What does that mean, Collin? I'm about to tell you, but so I want to assume you guys are very smart. You guys know about what ranked choice voting is. But for those of you, and shout out to DCist, I know they kind of did something similar to this like about a month ago for a segment that they did. We're going to go very quickly what it is for the folks at home that may not know what it is. So this clip actually is a short that was done by Mr. Beat. I've seen some of his stuff on YouTube. Does a lot of political stuff. He's okay, I guess, but at least for the stuff that I've seen. I wouldn't say some are more liberal, but I think overall okay. Actually, just go to that.
Yeah,
so he's going to explain in 1 minute just to give a general basis of what ranked choice voting is. So
Ranked choice voting explained in less than 1 minute. In a ranked choice voting system, voters rank candidates by preference on their ballots. So if there are 5 candidates, you rank them 1 through 5, with 1 being your favorite candidate and 5 being your least favorite candidate. After the ballots are counted, if a candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, they win the election. However, if no candidate wins a majority of first preference votes, there's automatically a recount. But the candidate with the fewest first preference votes is eliminated from that recount, and every person who voted for that person now has their second preference redistributed and added to the overall tally. If there is still no candidate who has won a majority of votes, the process repeats. The remaining candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and every person who voted for that person now has their second preference vote redistributed and added to the overall tally. This process keeps repeating until one candidate has a majority of votes.
all right. So basic rundown of ranked choice voting. So, okay. Thanks, Reef. So gonna play another video. This is from the Heritage Foundation. We all know who the Heritage Foundation is.
Yep.
Collin, why are you playing something from the Heritage Foundation?
Tell him, Collin.
There is a reason for that. So, but just carefully listen to what they say in this. Okay. Yeah, it will make more sense. I know Reef is like, why the hell are you doing
No,
this?
already
It will
the
make
guy.
sense.
It's the guy. It's like, could you be more Heritage Foundation? Like, look, dude, you can't even see his eyes. They literally go through him, like to the blue behind. Like it's just a hole here. Just soulless
before we start,
dead.
Before we start, we got a super chat from Steve
Wolfbrand.
Grow this damn channel. Yeah, we know.
We're working on it. God.
Look, you guys. Well, the only way it's going to grow is from you guys because we're heavily suppressed.
Yeah,
like
I think he's
YouTube
yelling at everyone in chat. Grow this. Do the thing. So
But
I'm gonna
listen to Steve. Help us grow.
roll this
Because we're
bean
suppressed
footage.
as shit. It's just so funny. Like, I'm subscribed obviously to this network, and like whenever we have clips, like they never show on my page. Never. I have to type in
Wow.
our network in order to see, what we have. So like,
Wow.
I will see like Savvy or Do Dissonance or RBN stuff that kind of pop up on my
Yep.
main YouTube page. Never our stuff.
I might get one
Never.
or two, depending, but
So,
I make sure to click it a
but
lot.
rarely, at least as far as my knowledge, I never see any of our stuff promoted on my page.
Wow.
But anyway, I digress.
Rolling the bean
there's a
footage.
reason- yeah,
What?
there's a reason why I am playing this. Listen to what they're saying and hold it in your brains, and then it will make sense as I go through the article that I read after this.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
I'm Hans von Spakovsky with the Heritage Foundation.
You're Hans. What? What? Who? Motherfucker, wait. That you can't. We gotta run that one back. Hold on.
I'm Hans von Spakovsky with the...
You were motherfucking the best in like the name game. Bobana Fana Fofana Hans Cons Mofans Mons. What? Sorry, I can't. We had to pause at that.
Heritage Foundation.
I'm Jason Sneed with the Honest Elections Project.
Jason
I'm Fred England
Sneed.
with Save Our State.
And we have been working hard to guarantee that we have honest and fair elections.
Some people want to radically change elections with a new, confusing process called ranked choice voting, which should really
A new and okay.
be called rigged choice voting because it disenfranchises voters and can lead to political activists trying to game the system to allow marginal candidates to win elections. Instead of just voting for one candidate, their top choice in a race, voters are forced to rank all
With the whip
candidates
pan.
from their
Stop
first
with the
choice
whip
to their
pan.
last choice. Then those preference votes are counted, and
every
if no
time.
candidate wins more than 50% of the
Whoosh.
vote, officials begin rounds of elimination. Candidates with the least support are eliminated, and the voters who selected that candidate as their number one choice or top choice automatically have their votes changed to their second choice, and another round of vote tabulation occurs. This process continues until one of the candidates ends up with a majority, but the winning candidate may be the second, third, fourth, or even last choice of most of the voters who initially cast ballots.
In a recent local California school board election using ranked choice voting, that's exactly what happened. But because ranked choice voting is so complex, nobody caught the mistake.
Not that
and the wrong
complex.
winner was certified and installed in office after multiple rounds of vote counting. It took an outside...
Because that totally doesn't happen in our system.
Right. Like that doesn't happen anyway.
Right.
Every election.
audit to finally uncover the truth. And now the real winner has to sue.
Mouse FS in the chat, you also don't have to rank all candidates, just the ones you prefer.
Exactly.
Right.
To be recognized. That's just one problem with ranked choice voting. It also takes more time for voters to rank all of the candidates in a race and to fill out their ballots. That means longer lines at the polls. The ballots themselves are more complicated to fill out, creating more room for errors and mistakes that may get mail-in ballots thrown
A calculator can
It
take 2
requires
seconds
more
to do
complicated
it.
and expensive voting equipment and puts more strain
No,
on
it
poll
doesn't.
workers who have to manage a much more complicated election system.
There's
No,
evidence
they
that it
don't.
discourages people from voting in the first place, and if voters don't rank all of the candidates in an election,
our system
their
doesn't do
ballots
that?
run the risk of being thrown out and not counted in later rounds of vote tabulation.
Then
It took
make it to where that doesn't happen. Like, it's like every sentence is fucking bullshit.
8 rounds of vote tabulation in the New York City mayor's race in 2021 over 2 weeks before the winner was determined. But the votes of more than 140,000 voters were thrown out and not included in the final count because they hadn't ranked all of the candidates in that race. It's no wonder then that some places have tried ranked choice voting only to repeal it. Aspen, Colorado
Venezuela's
experimented
tried
with ranked choice voting
communism,
in
but never
2009,
won
then
it.
voted overwhelmingly to get rid of it after only a single election. Voters in Alaska are organizing a campaign to repeal ranked choice voting there, which barely passed in a referendum election in the first place. And in Utah, where state lawmakers have allowed cities to experiment with ranked choice voting, many are expressing serious concerns that ranked choice voting is a bad process that doesn't deliver on its promises and implements a confusing, chaotic voting system.
Voters want elections to be easier, more secure, and more transparent.
Ranked choice voting makes voting
And less
harder
corrupt.
and is the wrong choice for our elections.
Ranked choice voting is a solution in search of a problem.
No, there's a problem. Clearly there's a problem. When 90%, when 100% of the candidates in office are unwilling to do the work of the people, which I'm not just talking on my ass, there's statistics that you only care about 1% of the public's like wants and needs, and we know which 1% that is. Something's wrong, which is why you don't want this, because it might fix that problem. So it's nothing to see here.
Right. There's more that I'm going to say to that. So keep a look. So hold your complaints.
Okay.
In your head.
Until we've all figured out it's bullshit.
There's a reason why I did this. Because now I can get to the article. So.
Yep.
So as I said, this is a local story for me. So this is in DC. All right. So Martin Austermuhle, I guess that's how you say your name. Sorry, Martin. From DCist, he reports DC Democrat Party sues to keep ranked choice voting and open primaries off the ballot. Not Democrats, not Republicans. Democrats are doing this.
Democrats? Are you sure? They wouldn't do anything like that.
Right. Well, we'll get into it. They
Okay.
are planning to.
Would they use the same Heritage Foundation talking points to talk about why they don't?
I mean,
that
let me read
seems
it.
so unlikely. Okay.
The
that's too
DC
big.
Democratic Party has filed a lawsuit aiming to keep a ranked choice voting and open primaries from getting onto the city's ballot for next year, saying that both changes to how DC runs its elections would run afoul of the city's charter and the U.S. Constitution. In a 33-page lawsuit filed in DC Superior Court, attorneys for the party's leadership say that a DC Board of Elections improperly gave the green light to proposed ballot initiative that, if approved by voters, would call on the DC Council to adopt ranked choice voting and open primaries by 2026. The party is asking a DC judge to nullify the board's ruling, which would effectively kill the ballot initiative. So basically, ranked choice voting and open primaries will be a ballot initiative here. Measure, at least. So that's potentially what we would vote on next year if it happens.
Okay.
Under ranked choice voting, voters can rank multiple candidates in any given race in order of their preference. If no one candidate wins an outright majority, the worst performing contender is dropped and votes are we know. And under open primaries, the city's 85,000 independent voters would be allowed to participate in a partisan primary of their choice. Currently, they're only allowed to vote in general elections. Sounds good, right?
Sure.
Proponents argue ranked choice voting moves away from the current system where winners in crowded fields can win with a fraction of a vote, often forcing voters to choose candidates they think can win instead of those they might really support.
Yeah.
As if that doesn't happen anyway.
Yeah, but that's what. But yes, proponents argue ranked choice voting moves away from the current system, where winners in crowded fields can win with a faction. Yes, that's what they're saying. They're moving away from. That's a good thing.
Like they also say. Go ahead.
No, I was waiting on you.
No, I good. They also say the system of voting, which is used in New York City, Maine, Alaska, and was recently tested in Arlington County, Virginia, forces candidates to reach out to more voters, creates more civil campaigns, and results in winners who have a broader base of support. As if that's a bad thing. Like, make them work to get my vote?
Terrible.
I don't know, Reef. That sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Like, it actually forces them to do something?
What?
Like, to come to me? Wow.
Okay.
As for open primaries, the initiative proponents say it would allow DC voters who are not registered with a political party to vote in primary elections, where many of the city's political races are ultimately decided because of the overall dominance of Democrats in local elections. Some states, including Arizona, Colorado, Massachusetts, and West Virginia, currently have semi-open primaries. So, in other words, we don't want independents to foul up our plans. That's basically what I'm reading that as. Right? So doesn't that sound kind of like what's happening on the national level as well?
Yeah.
And this is local politics.
Right. Well, it's also the fact that
anyway,
they're arguing that there's only one kind of ranked choice voting, too. There is other ways of voting. There's not just two.
Mm-hmm.
Look at some of the other ones and try some of those too. Like we can figure this shit out. Like, let's get it till it works. I think that's important. Anyway, continue.
But in a lawsuit, Democratic Party attorney Johnny Barnes argues that both proposed changes would violate local law and the Constitution. He writes that open primaries would violate the Home Rule Charter's requirement that the mayor, DC Council, and Attorney General be elected on a partisan and would violate Democrats' constitutional rights to freely associate by allowing non-Democrats to influence the outcomes of primary. So just more shit. It's just like, we don't want independents fouling up our plans.
Yeah. What did he say?
Barnes also said the ballot initiative would unlawfully require the city to spend money implementing ranked choice voting. Ballot initiatives can't force the city to spend any money, and would additionally violate the city's Human Rights Act because it would discriminate. Oh God, this is the worst part. It would discriminate against Black and low-income voters who could be confused by ranked choice voting.
Okay.
What? Bruh.
Democrats.
Bruh.
Democrats.
Oh, hell no.
Like,
Democrats.
Oh, hell no.
Democrats.
Bro, they just said...
Nope.
They just said, y'all motherfuckers stupid because you're black. That's what they just said.
Right.
Oh, like in public, in writing, that's what they just fucking said.
Yeah.
African Americans, are you listening? Are you listening?
Like, so truly, are Democrats any better than Republicans in that regard?
No.
Truly.
No.
Truly.
No.
Jesus
I'll
Christ.
continue.
Okay.
Like, so that's why. So now you know why I play the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, I know. It's same shit.
You know, I think you figured it out again. But it's like it's to kind of prove. But again, this is just another case for our audience because you guys are.
It could
I did this partially
confuse black voters. Fuck them.
Right, but
God damn
like
it.
honestly, ultimately, it's just for shits and giggles, I will admit. But it's just the idea of like, how different is what Heritage Foundation's reasons against it any different from this? You know, if anything, worse. Because they're basically saying, oh, if you're black and brown, you'll be confused. As if, like, if you live in a rich white neighborhood, you wouldn't be confused by ranked choice voting. Like,
Snap out of it.
Oh,
anyway.
fuck.
And in a
Okay.
non-legal argument, Bond said in the lawsuit that had ranked choice voting been allowed when the city gained home rule in 1975, Marion Barry may have never become. Why are you using Marion Barry?
Mary Berry.
Imagine the local history in the District of Columbia for the past 45 years had the outcome of elections been determined by open primaries and ranked choice voting, he writes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just to give preface, like Marion Barry is probably the most famous DC mayor. Like he was known, people might know him, like he partied with the type thing. That was the big scandal that he had.
Sure.
But surprisingly, that didn't if anything, that helped him. Like especially among the Black community. Like he became really popular because not in part to that, but just kind of showing, I wouldn't say solidarity, but like Black people stood by him in terms of that issue. So yeah, that was back in the 80s, I believe, when he was
popular.
in power. That was popular. So yeah. In its ruling late last month, the Elections Board rejected all those arguments, citing a legal analysis from DC Attorney General Brian Schwab's office, pointing that the initiative could be placed on the ballot. That analysis noted the implementation of ranked choice voting and open primaries would be contingent on the council choosing to allocate money for them, that partisan primaries would still exist in DC, and that any claims of disparate impacts on Black and low-income voters were speculative.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically bullshit.
Yeah.
When they were saying your arguments are
they were way nice about it, too.
Right.
So
the DC Democratic Party does not find itself alone in opposing the opposed ballot initiative. Congressional Republicans have introduced legislation to prohibit the city from adopting ranked choice voting, and the DC Republican Party has similarly come out against any changes on how the city runs its I mean, we know this, you guys know this, but it's just, and again, this kind of, and I have more to say on this, but like, when Democrats and Republicans are threatened by power, they will come together, so this is just another example of that. And again, local elections. This is not national. Adding ranked choice voting and open primaries will now bring significant confusion and embarrassment to the District of Columbia elections. Until we have much cleaner voter rolls and strong, reliable voting systems, we should not experiment with voting, particularly when people from all parties question the reliability and fairness of our elections administration, said DC GOP Chairman Patrick Mara in a statement last month.
That's y'all's fault. We're trying to make it to where we can get you out and fix it. Like that. They're essentially saying because elections are fucked, then these elections are fucked.
And trust me, I'm going to speak on that after I finish this.
Yeah.
But the record of ranked choice voting in the Washington region has been mixed. While Tacoma Park, that's a town, part of it's in DC, part of it's in Maryland. So I'm not so I'm guessing this isn't on the Maryland side. Has successfully used it for local elections for years. A recent test run in the June Democratic primary in Arlington County, Virginia, drew concerns from some residents and elected officials. While many people there said the system worked well, the Arlington County Board decided not to use ranked choice voting for November's general election over concerns that some Black and Latino voters had been confused about how to vote and how votes would ultimately be counted.
We're fucked.
More racism.
No.
Last month, elected officials in Rockville, again in Maryland, opted to keep a question on ranked choice voting off an advisory referendum to be held in November, largely over concerns that most voters still do not understand how it works. Proponents of ranked choice voting contend that the system is less confusing than critics claim, and the outcomes of elections decided using the system more closely reflect the will of the majority of voters. A first court date in the lawsuit has been scheduled for November. Even if the lawsuit is unsuccessful, proponents of the ballot initiative will still have work to do in order to put the question of ranked choice voting and open primaries before voters. They have to collect signatures from 5% of registered voters across the city, including 5% in 5 of the city's 8 wards.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So Democratic Party vote folks.
Mm-hmm. All I can
are
say
preventing
is if you're in that party,
run.
Get the fuck out.
I'm gonna say so I've been waiting to say this in terms of ranked choice voting, because again, like bigger YouTuber politician commentators talk about ranked choice voting, that we need to have it, they're a fan of it, that they'll be more willing to vote for like independent candidates if there was such a thing at ranked choice voting. Never talk about how we're going to get that though, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they always mention as this like ethereal thing, like one day magically when we'll have ranked choice voting, then we'll vote for someone like Cornel West or some bullshit like that, but here's a problem with ranked choice voting that this article does not talk about, and what many people don't talk about, because they talk about the concerns, but that's not really the core of the issue. Like, the issue is corporate interests. The issues is big money in politics.
Mm-hmm.
If you have those things, it doesn't matter if you're going to have ranked choice voting or not. Look what happened in New York. You have someone like Eric Adams, who's corrupt as hell, and basically, I can argue most, if not all, of those candidates in New York were shit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically, from that, you had to choose from the lesser of the shit, essentially. So it doesn't matter if you have ranked choice voting or not. The problem still lies in the corruption. And even if some reason...
Like,
go ahead.
I mean, it might help mitigate some of that. I mean, it's not a complete solution,
Right,
and like I said, there are other voting mechanics that can help even more than that. We should do a thing on that at some point, but
but it's still, there's still the idea of oh, it's too confusing, or oh, people will just people just vote here will generally just out of proximity. So it doesn't necessarily take away all those issues. If you're a low information voter, you're going to remain a low information voter regardless, even if you have ranked choice voting. You will just have more decisions as to pick who's your favorite. You know? So,
but that's to take into account the masses of independent voters that aren't voting because they know their system's rigged.
That's really right. That's the issue. That's really more of the issue that they're more concerned about, which I'm kind of glad was mentioned in this article. They're afraid of independent voters, having more of a say. Because in DC, you can't vote. I can't, I was independent for a while and I had to switch to green in order to vote. Like, if I was independent, I couldn't vote in an election. Or at least primaries. Like, I can vote in a general, not in primary elections. So that's the gatekeeping that they do in DC. Like, if I had the choice, I'd rather be independent, and that way I'll be able to vote for whoever I want to, regardless of when it is. So that's really more of the issue, at least in this article. And so, again, this is just more of a reason, once again, watch what's happening locally, because, this is a ballot initiative, and, both parties are working hard to make sure that ranked choice voting doesn't become a thing. And I know Nick, shout out to him, I know he's talked about ranked choicing before, and he's kind of mentioned his concerns about ranked choice voting. And honestly, now I have those same concerns. You know, if you don't get rid of big money in politics, you're still going to remain with the rot and the corruption of having politicians run, and it's not going to be necessarily choices that are made by the people anyway.
Yeah.
So that needs to be tackled first.
And you need to be doing both at the same time, really.
Right.
But
right. Which, God forbid, they talk about moneyed interests, which Heritage Foundation is not going to talk about, which Democrats and GOP in DC are going to talk about. Like, no, they want to keep that shit. So, you know, but that being said, I like the idea of it because it makes them scared.
Oh, yeah.
At least a little bit in terms of the idea of giving people more choice. And God forbid that they actually have to work in order to get my vote. Wow, what a concept.
Wow.
So,
wow. It's almost like a ton of Democratic politicians need to learn that. Speaking of which,